Chris, thanks for making time to talk to me today. For those of you who don't know Chris, he's one of the earliest people I know to have had a diverse career. Started in marketing and new product development, went on to run a very successful resort with his wife in Australia, which he has now sold, in order to address the climate change challenge and to look at how, by working with the clients and with staff, it's possible to reduce the utility bills and the impacts on the environment, particularly on carbon and water. So, Chris, welcome. Do you want to tell us what you're doing?
Sure. I've got a little presentation I'd like to run through. Um, I'm going to really discuss the subject of why we need to involve the staff and the guests to help us become more sustainable, and then demonstrate some of the things that I've created based on my work experience in pilot sites and now commercialized our product. So I'll start with that now. So essentially, what I'm keen to do is to assist the hospitality sector to build on its great efforts that it's made so far by involving much more the staff and the guests. And I'm going to explain why that's a critical thing to do. Um, I'm also going to be sharing research findings from my PhD, from my own hospitality business and a lot of other businesses, and the observations I've made about how the staff and the guests function within the buildings themselves, which will give people clues as to how we can make savings. So just as a background, we're all aware that we're running out of time to comply with the international legislation on carbon reduction, ESG reporting, and even, to improve the biodiversity situation. The new legislation, which is tough for businesses to now to comply with, will mean that each business will be comparable with another. And so others will be able to look at one brand versus another and see their progress, which places additional pressure on hospitality businesses. Often people look at CapEx expenditure as the solution, meaning buying hardware to put into their hotels, resorts, and so forth, to see if that's a way of reducing the impacts of carbon, energy use, or even looking at certain supply chain opportunities. But the problem is that most of the properties don't, or a large number of properties, don't actually own their own building. So making CapEx expenditure is difficult. And we've also got a shortage, I think we should be frank, we've got a shortage on the expertise to actually become more sustainable. Things are changing all the time. The regulations are asking for different types of reporting and scope 3 and so forth. So we need to improve on our ability to find the people to help us deliver the results that we want. There's also uncomfortable realities, one of which the BBC cited the other day that I observed, which was that 35% of the carbon reduction that we're seeking to achieve will be from technology that is yet to be invented. I would beg to differ with that, because I believe that I have actually invented one technology that can make a big difference. Primarily because when I'm monitoring hotels and resorts and so forth, I'm finding that at least 70% of the resources are wasted. And this is primarily because we still look at hotels as the problem, or buildings as the problem. But buildings don't use resources. It's the people that go into buildings and use the systems within it that are creating the waste. So we need to be focusing much more on the human side, not necessarily just on the hardware side. And, I hear a lot of CEOs and so forth talk about the need to improve their communication, certainly with guests. There is really quite a low level of sustainability engagement with staff and guests overall, which I think is a big problem. Here's some examples of what I mean by leaving the situation as the status quo. I've got a couple of examples here. On this slide, I'm showing you the electricity and water use from self-contained accommodation of a site that we work with in Europe. And you can see in the green numbers and the red numbers, the minimum and maximum use by guests, housekeeping, and the time between the end of cleaning and the check-in period. And what the key thing to notice is that while we've got an average figure, which is what people tend to look at, we actually have big differences on the amount of resources a guest might use between the highest level of guest use and the lowest level of guest use. Likewise, there is no consistency in housekeeping. And there's no consistency in the amount of resources used between after cleaning and check-in. So it's not just that guests have a will of their own. It's true to say that most of the people in the building aren't functioning in a synchronized way, and certainly not in an optimal way. The water is another example where we compared the guests and the housekeeping use of water. Obviously, the guests are staying a longer period in the room, so overall they would be using more. But on a per hour basis, you can see that guests can use a very little amount of water or a lot. And in some cases, some housekeeping don't use any water at all when cleaning a room. And in this case, this is a 3-star hotel. It's a large hotel. And again, the similar trend is revealed. And it's an enormous difference between some guests who are staying outside the hotel most of the time and use quite a little amount of energy, and those that leave everything on. And by using their credit card and a key tab machine, etc., they're able to continue to use their AC even if they're outside. But also sometimes you'll see in unoccupied rooms that the staff have left systems running. Now, there is technology, of course, to avoid this, which links in with building management systems. But frankly, that's a very expensive process, and not everybody can afford to install such systems. And I question whether they should be installed in all places anyway. With water, you can see, again, a significant difference in the amount of cold water and hot water that housekeeping use. That's really important because the second area of main energy use within an accommodation property can be from generating hot water. So what I'm showing there is a lack of consistency, and the important thing is that we really need all of these people to work in synchronization. As we leave it as today, it's quite evident that there's a huge amount of resource waste. Now, there is technologies out there that can certainly help, hardware technologies, and I've observed many engineers working very hard to try to use all of these different technologies, which aren't always integrated or synchronized, which means that they're looking at computer screens all the time that they're working there. But of course, at the same time, just to try and track that, they will have alarms sounding that certain ACs aren't working, or phone calls or SMSs to say certain toilets are blocked, etc., which means they are diverted away. It means they have very little time to conduct deep analysis on what is happening, and therefore put cases or assist them to put cases forward for further CapEx expenditure. But the standardization of room temperatures, for example, is a danger because not everybody wants the same sorts of temperature. And even if you modify the ACs so they reduce the amount, well, let me explain that better, that sometimes when you press your AC unit and you're seeking a temperature of below 18 degrees, the numbers might go down on your remote control or your thermostat control, but actually the engineer has programmed it not to go below certain numbers or not above others. But the danger here is that we still get guests who are uncomfortable because they're not acclimatized to the weather conditions, or we have people who have got health issues. So it's not an optimal situation. Now, I think a key solution is to remember that sustainability can really unlock potential competitive advantage. It's not something a bit of a problem that we have to do. It is actually a keystone, a foundation to enable the business to create a point of difference and to bring everybody together. And that keystone, which is essential to make sustainability work in hospitality, is the why. What is the purpose of the company? What is it seeking to do? And that drives the company culture. And the company culture is a way that we can involve the staff and the guests far more in reducing their consumption and being more responsible in the way that they're functioning within the building. If those people, the staff and the guests, don't really know what the purpose of the company is and aren't really aware of a strong culture, then they're very unlikely to want to comply with suggestions on becoming more sustainable, because there is no perception of integrity and there's no sharing of values, which is so important when choosing a brand. Now, what I'm proposing here and what I've demonstrated works in the marketplace is social technology. So it's using the systems that you already have, but making everybody involved in that so that they use the technologies around them as part of their way to save and conserve. So at the moment, we have a transactional situation. When you go to accommodation, you have unrestricted use of resources. So when you pay your bill, there was never any suggestion that your water supply or energy supply was going to be limited to a particular threshold. So you can use as much as you want. And we've got that current situation, although historically that wasn't necessarily the case. So now what we've got to do is to encourage people to be more mindful, because that can make a huge difference in helping a property become more sustainable. So what we're looking at here is improving the skills rate for the staff and encouraging the guests to participate, to collaborate. And they therefore have a partnership which reaffirms the whole point of staying at that property and reaffirms the culture and the purpose of the business. What's required is humanized design solutions. I mean, technology is around us all the time, but not all of that technology is fun and easy to use, or it can be quite shallow in what it conveys to you. You need connected intelligence. What does that mean? Not just about AI, it means linking the relevant things so that people understand the full picture, or a picture that's relevant to them, that enables them to make the decision to change the way that they're functioning. And all of this obviously has got to inspire climate action. So within this social technology, within the technology, the software technology that one's providing, what you're trying to convey here is intrinsic values. So not offering people discounts at the cocktail bar, but talking about how the savings can be applied to charitable giving within the destination that you're visiting, for example, which is far more motivating to guests than a couple of cents, dollars, whatever, off a drink, because they can obviously afford those drinks. What they're looking for is have good feel-good values about the property itself. Likewise with the staff, you can't keep paying staff more money, but you can show them that where the savings are going is doing good to the community that they live in. It needs to teach people, and it needs to enable those skills. So what we've done is developed a product called My Green Butler. So we have butlers, as you can see, and there are a variety to reflect the diversity of the world. And both the staff and the guests can pick whichever butler they prefer. They talk to you in different ways, and they have different, shall we say, areas of skill. So Brains, for example, is somebody who will talk to you much more about the technologies involved, the number crunching that you're interested in. And Michelle is a very efficient butler, and so forth. And what we're doing here is enabling, with our product, enabling the managers to set targets. We're allowing the staff to follow task management system to help them adapt to extreme weather events, seasonality, occupancy, and that the guests can enjoy participating in part of that process. So we start, first of all, at monitoring. So because we monitor resources in real time, you can make live decisioning. Now, at the moment, what we have is auditing going on at a single moment in time in a year. And like rooms are perishable, data is also perishable. We can't go back and fix the previous 12 months after reading the audit. What we're providing is that audit all the time live, and it enables people to take necessary actions to reduce wastage where they can. And we provide reports and so forth on that basis. Secondly, we provide sensitivity analysis, meaning it's a process which enables management to learn what's the optimal way of delivering their sustainability plan. So we collect the data, we give them the ability to look at that data, not as an overall 12-month period. We can break it down by month, by season, and so forth, and then break down each of the individual, for example, carbon categories, and set different targets for each of those across that time period, and adjust it so they can see what is realistic. And each of those results are then linked to individual tasks to the staff so they can help deliver those targets that people are seeking to achieve. This is all gamified too, and there's a character called Carbon Detective that provides support and advice to the managers in the process of choosing those targets. Now, when it comes to the staff, we know from lots of research that people are very caring and concerned about the environment. But what we're not picking up and what is essential is that actually the staff and most people have a low literacy rate of carbon, energy, water, waste, where their food comes from, and so forth. So it's very important that one gives them the knowledge in order to apply those skills. So we've developed a whole range of online training packages, which can be done on a mobile phone by members of staff over a period of time to build their capacity so that they understand why we're asking them to undertake the tasks that we're proposing. So this is the My Green Butler Academy, and that's now being introduced to a number of properties with really strong results. Staff are really enjoying that, and it helps them put everything into better perspective. So even if they're caring, they now have a deeper understanding. One thing to mention here, Harold, is that at the end of each training module, we also reflect how this information can help the staff in their own personal lives at home. So it makes it relevant to them beyond that, which is also surely part of what the company's purpose and culture should be. For the staff, we then give them a task management system. Now, obviously, what I found in the marketplace, a whole variety of different ways that managers provide advice and guidance and details to staff to conduct their daily work routine. The trouble is that it's not very easy for them to track. And if you've got a 37-floor hotel with 450 rooms, like one of my clients, it's impossible for managers to be everywhere. So by allowing the staff to have their tasks broken down by periods of the day, and it allows them to respond to how they're progressing with those tasks, the managers can see how things are going. And obviously you can comment and message and so forth. But those tasks are also broken into 3 categories, because what matters to the younger generation now in order to choose to work in a job or have a career is that they must have a sense of autonomy. They must have a sense that they're also working with a team. And overall, they must have a sense that they appreciate the values of the business and work with the business. So what we've done is to break those tasks down into carbon-focused tasks, thermal comfort tasks, and team-related tasks. And within any of those, they can prioritize those tasks, which gives them the flexibility. And it's really important, obviously with the color of my hair, I'm not from the latest generation, but in observing how they function in the workplace, particularly since COVID, their aims and their aspirations are quite different than previous generations. And it's been emphasized further by COVID. So we've created this product during and after COVID to maximize the opportunity of engaging younger people into the profession and keeping them loyal, which is essential to boost productivity. You'll notice at the bottom of the screen there's a range of faces. Every day, the staff can report to managers on how they feel, and they can do that by revealing their name or not and explaining why. So the managers every day can track the progress of the team and understand and identify times when they need to go and assist the members of staff and to build up that morale, for example. And you'll see in the top on the right hand of that little computer screen there, it says My Achievements. All of this is gamified, and there's a whole variety of achievements which are intrinsic that reward them for their continued progress as they go through things. And for guests, we provide them an A to Z experience before they arrive, during this day, and afterwards. And this communicates, really it's telling the story of sustainability at the property. So it's all personalized on what the property is doing, provides real-time feedback, either on individual rooms or in overall property. And it provides them control of radiators or AC units and explains them how and why that property is trying to reduce and the impacts that makes, which they can see on updated every 15 minutes. And when they leave, they get a carbon audit or an eco footprint, is a nicer term to call it, which they can take away with them. So that provides them surety that there is integrity within what the property is doing, and there is no greenwashing because we're fully transparent. So overall, the business case for involving social technology, involving your staff, involving your guests, which are so underused in the opportunity to make the savings, is that you can achieve significant savings of over 35%, which I have done in over 4 countries and a multitude of different types of accommodation. The return on investment on buying the monitoring hardware depends on the size of the business and the scope that people want to go. But it can certainly be done within 4 months. If you want to add additional things, it can be within a year. These are all things that you can add, which while CapEx aren't really going to interfere with the building owner's systems that are already in place. And they are obviously movable. What we're doing is increasing staff motivation, building that loyalty so they want to remain, which therefore improves productivity. Such an important bullet point, that, because at the moment, most people say, look, I haven't got time, we're short-staffed. So the critical thing is to not be short-staffed, to keep the people there. Sometimes I find people are staying only a few days, a few weeks. It's no way to deliver sustainability. And that's why I'm talking about the purpose and the culture, and using systems like this to be the glue to help you really drive sustainability forward. By delivering the service, you will increase guest reviews. And we all know that higher guest review properties can command a higher tariff rate. So it's economic sense. The live data allows real-time decisioning, not just for engineers, but for all managers that are involved in the program, so they can make better decisions of what's going on, which means you're not waiting 12 months for an audit. You're doing it every day, all the time. And you're applying adaptive behaviors during extreme weather events. So here in Australia, when we have high temperatures, we will see hotels increase their energy use by over 25% at peak rates. So it's really important to take proactive action prior to these events and be completely aware about the importance of your staff and your guest health, besides just saving energy and reducing the risks. So overall, this is what my Green Butler offers, but I put a lot more of this information in my book, which was recently published, called How to Create Sustainable Hospitality, which I freely share not only those insights, but I also share my mistakes, because sustainability is something that we've all got to collaborate on, and we all learn a great deal more from our mistakes. So I've highlighted those in the book as well. Thanks for your attention.
Chris, one of the things that strikes me listening to this is that I'm reminded of Krippendorf's point from the mid-80s, really, that it's not prohibitions and regulations that will help us to change the world. It's the sense of individual responsibility. And this system, it seems to me, provides an opportunity both for guests and staff to feel good about what they've done and to learn a lot more about the processes that, as you said, they can take home and take to other hotels. To what extent is you showed a very interesting graphic of setting out the tasks for a member of staff during the day. Can that actually be altered at the property level?
It can be altered at any time you want. So yes, each individual property sets its own tasks, which we provide the framework for. And those tasks can change by the managers and supervisors. And it's also possible for smaller properties, for example, that the individual staff members can duplicate or modify some of those tasks as they learn more, as they observe. All of those things are obviously linked to maintenance reports, so the maintenance can come to fix certain things and so on.
I remember that one of the things that Xavier Font's research demonstrated was that people, if you were trying to change their behavior in the room, being told what previous occupants of the room had done was one of the most powerful ways of encouraging change. Now, I'm assuming that this way of collecting the data enables you to compare the performance of one member of staff cleaning rooms on a particular floor with others, and similarly to enable the resident in the room, the person who's rented that room temporarily from you, to see how their performance compares with previous guests. Have I got both of those things right?
That's correct. But what's critical, it's not about shaming. It's about empowering individuals. So good managers will highlight positive behaviors, positive actions, highlighting staff who've done rooms using a certain amount of resources or performed in a particular way to guide other members of staff. It's not about ticking off individuals who don't do well. From a guest point of view, when we report the resources, we show them what we're target saving, what they're currently using, and then what the best performer has achieved in that room in the same season. And I can't emphasize how important it is to recognize the huge resource changes, even eating habits, food waste through the year. That it isn't this whole thing that we always refer to, in terms of benchmarking and some of these averages aren't appropriate in the real world because there's such significant differences. So it's very important to put everything into the correct context and to be very positive so people aspire to things rather than feeling down about it.
Chris, finally, can I ask you about the point you picked up, and which, in my view, is not discussed frequently enough in relation to hospitality, which is the chasm between the owner of the property, who, after all, controls the kind of technology that's in place, may or may not have had some influence over the way the place was built in the first period. But certainly the person operating the hotel is really just landed with a particular facility, and they can't change much about the physical way that that facility was designed, built, and operates. Do you see people being more aware of that now, or are people still blind to it?
I don't think people are blind to it, but I don't feel that there's enough debate within hospitality for those that are managing a property about how to present opportunities to the owners. That means the owner's long-term asset value will increase because of the green measures. Secondly, it's also because of that conundrum. Even with people who do own their properties, they also may have limited capital resources. That's why I've developed the product to emphasize it's the humans aspect, which is something that they do have control on. And it's the way the humans function within the building that is a key area to focus. And thirdly, the guest experience design is almost never talked about. And that is the furnishings. So in other words, you go into, we always pick on hotels, but let's just pick on self-contained accommodation for an example. And there are things that are standardized that aren't appropriate. So for example, window coverings aren't thermal efficient. There's not suitable bedding for winter, etc., etc. And I find I have a great deal of work involved in guest experience design, recommending additional things that are quite low cost that can be introduced that don't affect the owner, but do enable the guests to adjust and adapt their behaviors to different climates, etc., and therefore reduce their consumption. And it's a nicety. We're in hospitality. Surely we should be offering hospitality and enabling the guests to feel at home and have the things that they need to make them more comfortable.
Do you have any evidence, Chris, on the guest experience value of these changes?
Yes. I mean, I've got evidence to show that in using two different sources of energy, that it was possible to move guests from using one system to another, making, like a 50% or 33% saving in their electricity use, for example, getting people more mindful. So it's a seasonal changes. So as you move out of winter to spring, you can have some really warm spring days, but then very cold. And it's those very cold days that people then overreact, or vice versa, from summer to autumn and so on. And by putting those things in, people hold out longer. And the reason is, it's a psychological reason, is that in the back of our brain, it's a primeval aspect of our brain that if a man's temperature drops by 2 degrees or increases by 2 degrees, we will die. So we tend to react very fast to situations because our primeval part of our brain is saying, quick, do something. Women can tolerate a 4-degree difference. So imagine that you're driving, let's just pick from Paris to Lyon, and it's a very hot day, but you've got great air conditioning. When you get to Lyon, where there's a really hot situation. You open the car door and you're going to go into the hotel. The heat then is such an extreme, your brain is going crikey. And you walk in and you're really worried that the room isn't going to be cool enough. And what happens is that people overcompensate and then use too many appliances to cool down, rather than taking a cool drink, sitting down in the shade. Very much what Arabs offer in some properties is a nice cool drink when you arrive. It's the same token. So what I'm getting at is there are steps on the journey that will encourage people to moderate, because once you are aware that you are in control and can manage that environment, you then don't panic and you don't turn everything on. And that's the key thing that we need to be focusing on. What happens at the moment is that most properties will standardize temperatures even when rooms aren't full, or when they're empty. And actually, I would argue we're wasting a great deal of energy because we don't need to be doing that. Not all the time.
Chris, I'm reminded of my experience in the certified hotel in Morocco. I think I've told you this story before, but for the benefit of others, checking into the hotel, I hadn't chosen it, but it was a gold rated sustainable hotel, certified and so on. Went to the room, it's 34 degrees outside, the room temperature is set at 15, all the lights are on and the TV is telling me who I am. I don't have Alzheimer's yet. And so I opened the door, put the thermostat up to 24, which is, I think, is a comfortable temperature for me to sleep at, put all the lights out, switched all the TV off, went out for supper, came back, guess what, 15 degrees, all the lights on, TV on, telling me who I am. And now I'm having to waste all that energy again and waste my own time by standing at the door while the room warms up, because that's just going to make me ill if I sleep in that temperature. So Chris, you're offering a management system to hotel operating companies, which overcomes many of the difficulties of the fact they didn't build the hotel, enables the guest experience to be improved, and creates motivation for the staff. I take your point about the shaming, but you can have the best green employee of the month without shaming the others. And it seems to me this fits very nicely with some of the other ways in which hotels traditionally recognize those members of staff who are performing best.
Absolutely, yeah.
Chris, I wish you well with this work. I think it's groundbreaking and it's very exciting. Thank you very much for sharing it with us today.